Okay, let's see if this is working. Check, 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 check. Let's see if this comes back. I forget what the latency is. Let's see. Yeah, that looks good. Okay, so I don't know if I need to turn up. So today I don't have any guests. I guess if somebody wants to come in, I'm still learning how to use this Skype, the connector to Skype. I got way behind on my Quora stuff, and sometimes I spend a lot of time on here. Sometimes I just get too frustrated. Just like with the like on our forums or on the kind of the audio engineering groups, and even sadly the Reaper forum. We always get those people who just answer questions and they don't answer the question. They preach at the person who asked it or whatever. So sometimes I see those on Quora and I don't want to be on anymore. But after a while, it kind of builds up and I try and get back in. So let's see what they found for me. And sometimes they send you the weirdest questions and you're like, well, this has nothing to do with me. So anyway, let's take a look at look here. What's an affordable beginner MIDI keyboard? Anything. I mean, I just go on Craigslist and for the kids that come to the school here, anything I see for $25, if I've got it, I'll usually go and try and grab it. Even the cheap, like junk stuff, like the newer stuff, even has a USB over MIDI. They almost always have MIDI outputs. They don't always. The MIDI implementation isn't always that good, but I mean, if you really just needed to, if you weren't worried about the sounds, you're just using it as a performance thing. Let me look real quick. So even someplace here like Hawaii, where we don't really have much here, but even still, if I just type in keyboard, let's see what we get. 135. Oh, actually I should get this because we need this for the school. Oh. See, some of these M Audio ones are also audio interfaces, I think. Let's see what this has. So this got USB. Yeah, I don't know if this is one of the ones that's also an interface. But this thing would definitely do. Wow, look at that. Well, I should get on this. But even these cheapies here, there's like even these Casios, no joke. A lot of these Casios have MIDI in and out on them. It doesn't show the backside, but chances are it does. Like, it's not like back in the day where you had to pay fortunes for these things. They may not be weighted keys or anything like that, but they'll work. Okay, but I'm not really much of an idiot, so I'm probably not the right guy to ask for that anyway. So let me just let me see what else we got here. Okay, so I don't know. Is this? I have. Why is that for me? This is a good one. Is it a bad idea to put magnets near a digital to analog audio converter? Probably not, unless that thing also happens to be your modular digital multitrack. Like if you had an old D88 or 8-app machine or something, a magnet would probably mess some things up there, I would think. Yeah, I don't know. This is usually this has a lot of questions that are very specific to me. Is there any way to tell someone is recording with their computer? I don't know. I don't care. What's the best DAW for MIDI editing? So, oh wow, you think this one's going to get ugly, right? If you want my opinion, I see. Logic has been at the game for forever, and I know, there's been lots of changes and stuff since Apple bought them, and maybe it's worse, maybe it's better. But long ago, when computers were barely running at all, I used to watch composers and producers using Logic and just flying through it. Back then, we had racks of outboard MIDI sound modules and maybe one MIDI performance controller that they did write everything in with, and Logic just seemed awesome for that. And today, still see people on the Mac using Logic. Now that Cakewalk's free, maybe that's good. I don't really know that much about MIDI. I know that people still complain about MIDI and Reaper, so maybe you're looking at Studio One or Cubase, one of those things. I know I can edit MIDI and Reaper, but I don't do that much MIDI stuff, so maybe my advice wouldn't be that good on there. So yeah, another non-answer. Sorry. What does your music studio look like? Yeah, I'm always with the form follows function kind of thing. So my stuff is usually pretty ugly, but lately, it's been looking kind of cool. I think maybe people would disagree, but let me at least the tracking room. I mean, it's always kind of a cluster in there and a lot of crazy junk all over the place, but I think you look at my room. I think it looks pretty nice now. All those little bass traps and absorbers and junk running around. All the drums are always mic'd up. My control room looks horrible. It's where I fix everything that goes broken at the school, and it's also my, it is my mixing control room, but it's also storage for a lot of stuff, and we teach guitar lessons in here, so probably not that good. Okay, what's the best microphone for recording two simultaneous speakers in studio quality for podcasting? That's going to be rough. I know you could conceivably make a figure eight and both of you talk on either side of it, but editing later on is going to be hard. Is there a particular reason you need to be one microphone? You could get two really cheap mics and probably have a way better time than even a rather expensive single mic for two people. I mean, like one of those imitation 57s or imitation 58s. Behringer has them. I think it's called the XM8500. You can get those Sennheiser 835 or 935s in a 3-pack for pretty cheap. And just any audio interface that you're going to get, go ahead and fry me for it. But the HD series from Behringer or the Focusrite 2i2, I think you're going to have a much better time with that than I don't care how much you pay for the mic. There's a whole different thing going on with two separate discrete tracks than one. But I don't want to be that guy that I complain about that totally answers a different question than you're asking. So I have no idea. You get a figure eight mic, get an Omni mic. Maybe that's, studio quality. Yeah, it's studio quality. What you're going to end up with, I don't know. This is kind of one of those fights between equality of opportunity and equality of outcome. Let me look and see what the specifics are on this thing. Yeah, see, they're saying the same thing as me. But maybe there's maybe there's a reason that he needs it to be a single microphone, but I don't know. If it was, I'd say a figure eight. That's gonna be your best bet. But again, I don't know. You'd really run into some room treatment things like that. Even if you had one side that was pretty good, the other side's gonna be bad. Okay, how often should you intonate your guitar? This is the bane of my existence right here, especially when it comes to bass guitar. It should be intonated. Period. When you're playing your guitar, it should be intonated. How often? The question kind of asks, like, it's kind of saying, how often do these go out of intonation, and so then how often should I be, fixing again? I don't know. These super expensive name brand guitars, I find fall out of intonation rather quickly. That these vintage Gibsons and Fenders, they, it's my experience. I'm sorry if you hate to hear it this way, but they just seem to come out quickly. I don't know if maybe the tolerances weren't that good in the machining back then or something, or even the modern ones that are made to seem like the old ones, they go out a lot. So it's worth checking. Modern guitars, even the $100, and I say it all the time, this cheap piece of junk, this $100 Dean Vendetta guitar, those things stay in. I mean, it's seriously a perfectly well functioning guitar. So it depends on your guitar how often you're going to need to, like how often it goes out. But I would say that you should always be intonated. It always should be. If you're coming to record with me, and your guitar's not intonated, I am going to intonate it on the studio clock. Sorry. I mean, that's just how it is. And I have a friend who's now working at the First Guitar Center in Hawaii, and I guess we should talk to him. Mr. Cedric, man, let's. Is there a package for going into the studio and getting all your band's guitars and basses intonated? That sounds like a smart thing to do. Well, I tell you, you will ruin otherwise perfectly good tracks just because of the intonation, and the tuning drives me nuts. Another thing is, you should be. This is more for singers, but it's just, guitar players as well. You should be feeling pain. Like it should physically hurt you to hear something grossly out of tune. And you should get there as quick as you can. Like just make it a point that you want to feel pain from being out of tune. And intonation is part of tuning. And let me tell you too, intonation isn't just, having the guitar being set up perfect. You have to play correctly. If you're playing with banana fingers, man, banana fingers drive me nuts. And Google it. To me, it's when your knuckles go backwards instead of forward. Like I want to see people playing on their fingertips, especially on chords. And one place this really nailed us in the 90s was when everybody was drop tuning. And so they're just using one finger as a bar across 2 or 3 strings, and that the intonation really came into play there. Especially Okay, so man, I'm gonna go off so many tangents here. I'm sorry. So first of all, your fingers not being in the right, bending one string more than the others, which is really hard not to do, but. Eventually, I think that stabilized where people can play in drop tunings and be in reasonable tune. You'll see some people handle that by using a lot more tension, so a lot thicker of strings. Other people have just kind of migrated to it. I remember I used to be a total Nazi about it. Like, man, I don't want you playing in drop tuning. We're gonna retune your guitars, and I know that made a lot of trouble for me career wise, but I just couldn't really get them in tune usually otherwise. But the other thing is that a lot of guitars, they were even sold as, there used to be a thing, I think you used to see at a Guitar Center where there's like a sticker on it or something. It's like drop C ready, drop D ready, whatever. And you actually couldn't move the intonating adjustments, the saddles, you couldn't move them back far enough to actually be statically intonated in drop D, and it was just a nightmare. I'm like, man, you just bought this brand new guitar. I feel bad because they bought them specifically to come into the studio, and the thing just can't intonate right, and that really sucked. So that's another one. There's just so much to this intonation. Anyway, a lot of the best guitar techs, to me, that they'll watch you play and they'll see just how much you're bending, and they'll keep back in the day we had the Peterson, like this strobe tuner, which is like the ultimate authority. If you violated Mr. Peterson, you were in deep trouble. So you would it's easier with the vintage guitars, as much as I don't like them, but that style anyway. You would sit there while the guy's playing chords and stuff, watching the strobe tuner, and you start just taking a screwdriver while he's holding the guitar and flattening it or sharpening it. So, most of the time you would set it a little or a lot flat to compensate for how the player was actually gonna play. So the theoretical intonation where, the 12th fret harmonic and the 12th fret are exactly the same, is usually actually too sharp, or is sharper than what it really needs to be. So you actually got to keep setting that flatter and flatter, and a lot of times you'll see the guitar just won't go back far enough. So that's, I know that again, that's not the question you asked. I'm sorry, but I always have tons to say about intonation. It's really something that makes a lot of trouble here in the studio, especially. And I always tell the bands, I don't care if you're the best player in the world. If you're out of tune on stage, you're going to sound like a clown. You just are. Get in tune, So that's not just tuning your guitar or, oh boy, I don't even know if I should get into this, but, fully floating tremolos, they are always out of tune. I know people get away with stuff with them, and I know people insist up and down that, no, it's perfect and stuff, but go ahead, play just hit a open note on your B string on your guitar, and then if you got like a Floyd Rose or a Bigsby or whatever, hit an open B, watch it on the tuner, and then just bend the low E string, half a step even. Just go ahead, bend it half a step, and then look at what your B string's reading. I mean, I won't buy a guitar without a Floyd Rose on it, and so I'm guilty, but I actually lock mine so they're dive only usually. Every once in a while I try and set one up so that it doesn't have a dive only mod on it, but especially for recording, man, I hate just to hear those things out of tune. So holding a chord puts it out of tune, resting your palm on the bridge puts it out of tune. And you can make them work perfect. And yeah, there's all these, I mean, this is to the point of religious dogma where people say, oh no, you just have to set them up right and they work perfect. No matter what, when you bend a string on a Floyd Rose or on a floating tremolo, it's going to dump the tremolo forward unless there's some kind of stabilizing system on there. And there's several of those out there, and you'll see I have old videos about different versions of that, trem setters and back boxes and things like that. But fully floating tremolos are a problem for tuning. They just are. And but I've seen people get away with them pretty well. So it's up to you. But if you're recording with me and you want to get the best possible recording, we're at least gonna consider different options for maybe some of the rhythm guitars and things. Maybe not. Maybe you got it. I don't know. You just check real quick if there's actually ones that look like they're smart for me. Questions for me. Out of acoustic, electric, and regular electric guitars, what's the easiest to use and play for music such as Oasis and the Rolling Stones? What do you mean by easy? If you don't want to buy an amplifier, get an acoustic. If you want really easy adjustment, tends to be that even $100 electric guitars will have truss rods on them that you can adjust, and you can adjust the bridges and stuff, so you can adjust the action. So if you can play an electric and you can afford an amp or whatever you're gonna use it with, like I almost always just play my guitar through the computer, but whatever. If you, to me, it's easier to do an electric, but if you just want to pull it out and play it, man, it's hard to beat an acoustic. What are the best DSLR camera microphones for videos? I don't know. I would go on a long rant about the whole Euro laws that affect us for DSLR cameras that drive me nuts, but it's beyond the scope of this one. What are the steps to consolidate all good audio files in my Reaper DAW projects? Okay. So you would think I could answer this without looking at Reaper, but I might not be able to. What I do is I make sure that I have only the stuff that I want left in the project. And then there's an action. Let's just go and find it real quick. I think it's called crop. Let me see. Crop. Yeah, here it is. It's an action called take crop to active takes and items. And when I'm sure that all I want is that last take, I'll just select all and then hit that action crop to active takes, and then I will save the project. And if it's only a part of the project that I want, I'll also do that crop project to time selection, hit save again, and then I'll save as. Let me pull this back up again. So I will save project as, and then I'll make a new folder, put it in there, and copy all music into project directory using, and then convert media, and then format I actually won't mess with. I'll click it to make sure nothing's checked under set format to save as. I'll just make sure that box is unchecked, and then I'll do this trim media tail size 500 milliseconds. I'm not sure if that's really necessary every time, but that's what I'll do. And then I'll just save it all into there, and then I'll just use that folder from then on. I might delete the old folder or whatever. And I know early on I'd really put Justin through a lot to make sure we had a whole bunch of actual consolidate options, but sorry, I don't actually use those anymore. I really just use the save project as for the most part. I will sometimes use consolidate if I'm sending the files out to somebody else to use as individual files. But and if I do that, I actually have I'll put a little bit of a blank, an empty audio item at the very beginning of the project, because sometimes your glue and consolidate won't start it from the very beginning. There's different rules for that, and there's ways not to even have to worry about it. But just to be safe, I put a little bit of empty audio item at the beginning of the project on every single track that doesn't start from the very beginning. And then that way they'll all start in the same place, and they'll all at least start at the same place, even if they're not exactly the same length, because some of them just cut off earlier. But you could put that at the end as well if you wanted them all exactly the same length. To me, when you're sharing files, it's usually just important to me that they all start at the same time. And then there's some crappy DAWs out there. I think maybe Pro Tools still, where you got to worry about what's going to be mono and stereo. Like, I don't know if it's still a problem, but some DAWs act funny about stereo files versus mono files. So you do have to worry about that a little bit. What are some good alternatives to guitar lessons? Man, I tell you, this is I didn't walk uphill both ways in the snow and get off my lawn and whatever, but you have no excuse to suck today as a guitar player. I would have killed for all these YouTube things. I mean, you could just go on YouTube and learn everything. It might be hard to know exactly what to learn when. So it's still, I mean, that's where guitar lessons are still good. But, any specific technique, man, I would have killed for this. Like, back in my day, gas was $1 a gallon, minimum wage was like $3 a gallon, whatever, or $3 an hour. A good tab book or music book or whatever, it cost you $20, That was a substantial chunk of your time. And they usually weren't very good either. That's the sad part. Like, you go on Ultimate Guitar and look at the tabs, they're way better than these ones I used to have to pay crazy money for. And I could buy maybe a cassette or two a week. I mean, it's a lot of money. And so you just had to guess what it was that you wanted to hear. Like, I didn't even know, bands, you don't know what they sound like, so you just had to guess and hope. Nowadays, you just jump on YouTube and you can hear everything. You can see people showing you the technique. You can get that out of a book, man. But if I were starting out today, and I don't care what style of guitar you're playing, I would seriously, and I know it sounds a little bit expensive up front, maybe. Maybe there's cheaper ways to start it, but I would go to Metal Method. That Doug Marks has it laid out exactly how you'd want to go from, to get you up playing pretty well, and really good ways to check your progress and stuff. The Metal Method stuff is really good. I would go and do that. I would honestly, it's not a paid advertisement or nothing, but I do talk to them from time to time, and I'm somewhat active on their forum, but I really do think that Metal Method is great. The other one, and this is from when I was learning, was Troy Stetina. I'm not. I think he's still got stuff. He's probably got a website. Let me take a look. Actually, I learned a ton from his Heavy Metal Rhythm Guitar Volume 1 and 2. I think was called. So here's Stetina.com. So this was back in the day. This was a cassette, if you guys know what those are. A cassette and a booklet, and you would just follow along. And I learned a ton from him, So I'll always be grateful to Troy Stetina. Also learned a ton from Doug Marks. So Metal Method, either one of these, But this is from a very old person's way of looking at it. Telling you the stuff on YouTube is awesome. If there are bad habits you can get into that are really hard to unlearn. I'm still working on that. I would talk to people who are better than you, or you look up to playing guitar, and just ask them, to show them some YouTube videos and ask them if that's what you should be following, and you're probably gonna be fine. Man, I would have killed. I would be so much. I'm so jealous of kids growing up today, honestly, like to be able to do this stuff. It's just absolutely amazing what you can get off of YouTube, so that's what I would say. Want to learn guitar, but I don't have time to learn. Can I learn through online? Yes, you can. Just see the last answer. I don't know why I'm getting so many guitar questions. I used to fancy myself as an okay guitar player, but it's not really my specialty. What software can you use to record and edit a podcast? Okay. Here's where we get to where Reaper really shines. I don't know if any of you guys were old listeners to the Infidel Guy podcast, but I would just constantly go back and forth with him about, what would you look for, and what kind of problems does he have all the time. And I would say that Reaper is absolutely excellent for editing podcasts. And if I were doing it, we just added a lot of features to make sure you could do it. And I did have a show about, how hard it is to broadcast from an ASIO application like Reaper. But, that's what I'm doing right now. So you can do it. I'm having a little bit of trouble getting Skype callers in and stuff, but actually I'm doing that as well. But let me show you. This might actually take a second, but I'm going to load up a project real quick, and I'll show you. I was actually showing a couple podcast editors a few weeks ago exactly how they could work. So Reaper does have ripple editing if you want to work that way. All the grouping and all this stuff. The really forensic stuff, I still think Cool Edit, whatever they call it now, Adobe Audition, is going to be really good for that. So if you really do have a lot of problem noises and stuff, that might be something for you. But let me show you. So let's just say this is somebody talking here. It's actually a snare drum track, and I'm using stretch markers and everything. This is a whole multi-track here. So basically, just hit S to split, and these are grouped right now. That's why they're all moving together. But when you overlap something, automatically crossfades. You can turn that off, of course, but so I'm just showing you some of the things. The same tool. I'm not changing mouse tools here. I'm using the same tool for everything. There's your fade in, fade out, trim. You can slip edit. I'm holding Alt to slip edit. You adjust individual clip volume, like, oh man, this one word was too loud right here. And in this mode, like, I have it set to spectral peaks. So anything black, that's going to be a really high frequency. So if you're having a lot of trouble with S's, like sibilants, just split it and get it out of there. I have this set in a mode where if I use the top half of the waveform, it's going to move things left and right, up and down, in time or whatever. If I use the bottom half of the waveform, it selects that part of the time. So I can actually select this thing, hit, what do I have, Control X? No. Alt X? No. Shift X? I can't remember where. Yep, there we go. So I have it set so that I can delete a selected part of a selected item real quick. So you can use that for cleaning up dialogue. So let's turn ripple editing on. So hold on. Sorry, I'm gonna put this all on one screen. Set grouping. So here's ripple editing. This is per track. Ripple editing, all tracks. I don't use ripple editing that much, but if you're doing podcasts, you might want to. So I'm gonna let's say I'm gonna split this chunk right here, and I'm gonna delete that chunk. Blam. See how it puts it together. There's other rules for ripple editing. So if I move this here, in fact, let me just make some stuff here. Turn off ripple editing, and I think there's ways to individually hide things from ripples. But let's say I have ripple editing on. I want to move this whole thing forward. It's going to move everything after that. So ripple editing is good. Reaper's good for podcasts. You right-click it, and you can open items in your external editors, and you can add 2 editors if you want. I use Wavesaur, but back in the day, I used to use SoundForge and Wavelab as my secondary editor. Nowadays, in Wavesaur, I can just oops. Oh, I don't have it set up right now. Sorry. Wavesaur has the pencil tool in case you want to draw in samples and stuff. So that's what I use for that. Okay, let me see if there's some other questions here. So yeah, I love the Reaper questions, but Kenny, and make me feel a little bit irrelevant nowadays. Kenny and John Tidy is doing so much with them nowadays. So who knows? So what are my answer requests? This is do you like naming tracks in your DAW or mixing console? Do you truncate or abbreviate? Yeah, I definitely like to name them, and I like it when the name goes onto the item as well. And I still abbreviate them. I know I shouldn't, but I try and keep it to like 8 to 10 letters. And I'll just abbreviate, high as HI, DI as DI, the simple stuff. Vocals, maybe I'll just put VOC, and guitar, maybe I'll put GTR. Sometimes I don't, though. Oh man, I don't even want to answer this one. What are some ideas for audio signal processing side projects? So that's Nick Lepanovic. I want to talk to you. So let's. I'm going to save this for later because I actually want to talk to you personally. I'm always looking for coders if that's what you're asking. So. What is the best DAW for non-electronic music? I don't think there's even a best anymore. When we were first making Reaper, I really think there wasn't. For what I wanted to do, there wasn't anything I could use. That they're all made by people who seem like they had never been near a recording studio, and they don't want to take any input from us. But nowadays, everything's really good, man. I mean, all the DAWs that I try, they're all decent. For non-electronic music, I would take Reaper, but I'd take Reaper for anything. But I do know that a lot of times if people are doing a lot of MIDI or a lot of looping, I will recommend other DAWs than Reaper for them. Like earlier when I was talking about Logic for MIDI, if you're doing performance-based electronic music, EDM, or even just a lot of loop-based stuff, I would say take a look at Ableton Live because it is absolutely awesome for that. That's going to be all I'm going to do for today, but this is actually pretty cool. So I'm going to try this again. If you guys hate this, let me know, and I'll never do it again. But so far, I actually like this answering the chorus stuff. So I'll see you guys later.